Right, so welcome today to our three speakers. We're going to be discussing the impact of COVID on travelling exhibitions and how our speakers see travelling exhibitions evolving. Our speakers are, first of all, Nathanja van Dijk, who is director of the Kunsthal in Rotterdam. We have, she's been there for just 1 year, I think, so
Yes.
An interesting first year. And we have Amanda Mayne, who's head of international touring exhibitions at the British Museum, who's I think been there for 12 years, so has been very instrumental in growing that part of the business at the British Museum. And finally, we have Arnold van der Voorten, who is at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and also is a partner in a company called Factor, which is a creative consultancy founded in 2005, providing strategy, spatial concepts, and transformation. So welcome to you all today.
Thank you.
Good stuff. I thought I'd start off with each of you. If you could just give us a brief overview of your respective institutions and the work that you do. So Nathanja, if you go first.
Well, thank you. And thank you for this wonderful invitation. So yeah, I'm a general director of Kunsthal Rotterdam for a little less than a year now. So basically what we are, we're not a museum, but we're a platform for art, culture and society. So we present over 20 exhibitions a year. It's a very high contrast program, which spans from an exhibition on color and its influence on contemporary art to skate culture to this amazing extravagant exhibition that we recently presented by the fashion designer Thierry Mugler. And yeah, so how does that work? Everything we do is based on collaboration with national and moreover international institutions. So the other day I was talking to a business club and I said, well, listen, art is entrepreneurship. And what we do here is we constantly kickstart a new startup. Every exhibition we make or every presentation or program that we develop, we have to start from scratch with our partners. So we're happy to be connected to this vast international network of cultural partners such as Guggenheim or LACMA or ACME in Melbourne. But we're also we're Kunsthal Rotterdam, so we're also deeply rooted in the Rotterdam art scene and the Dutch art scene and cultural scene. We cannot hear you, Charles.
You can hear me now. Sorry about that.
I can hear you now, yes.
So Amanda, I think obviously we've all heard of the British Museum. If you could give us a bit of an overview of your role. I know the museum itself has well over 8 million objects, so give us an introduction to what you do there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I've, as you said, been at the British Museum for, I think it's almost 13 years now. Time is flying. And I've always been involved in the international touring exhibition side of what we do. So we have a portfolio of exhibitions based on cross-collection exhibitions, single culture exhibitions, also contemporary works that we tour around the world. Department has been in operation for around about 16 years, so before I started, but has exponentially grown over the years. We are a team of 10, which I think is quite large in comparison to some other people. And we're very lucky to have 2 curators who are devoted to the touring exhibitions, who work on cross-collection exhibitions, as well as bringing in expertise from subject specialists. I would estimate that we probably have around 15 exhibitions at a time on our portfolio, again, from across the collections. And these will vary in size from the sort of larger blockbuster type exhibitions down to quite nuanced print and drawings exhibitions, which focus on a smaller area of interest. We're very busy, even with COVID, and it's an integral part to what the British Museum does. It has a dual purpose. It is for income generation, of course, which, as we all know, has become much more important in the last 6 months. But it's also our mission to share the collection with a global audience. We've had exhibitions, I think, in almost every continent, and we're particularly active at the moment in Australia, in Europe, and in North America.
Fantastic. And Arnold, if you could, I know you wear 2 hats essentially, if you could perhaps introduce us to what you do.
Yeah, so for the last 15 years, I'm involved from a company called Factor. to assist our clients that are mainly institutions, museums, and collection owners in creating exhibitions, visitor centers, and often in combination with a mission or a business goal that is behind it. That can be an extension to reach out new audiences outside their museum walls. That can be collections that are normally not visible to the audience because they're simply not placed in a gallery, but in a depot. And one of the projects that I'm personally involved in for the last years is a project by the Van Gogh Museum. The Van Gogh Museum doesn't own 800 or 8 million artifacts like the British Museum. It's actually a single artist museum. So it's one of the largest in their kind, but still a relatively narrow collection. And the challenge with that is, of course, if you would go tour with that collection alone, that basically you end up at an empty museum. And the strategy from the museum there is to act local, digital and global. And with the global, of course, that has been done by loans with other institutes to create new exhibitions on a temporary basis. But I think one of the inspiring initiatives is an initiative called Meet Vincent Van Gogh. And it's really not about the art, but it's a biography exhibition about a life story that is fueled with digital technology, which I think is more common in a natural history museum or a science center than rather that you would find in a fine art institute. And this is one of the initiatives that is now touring with 2 sets currently around the globe, and is also currently, even in COVID times, on display in Lisbon.
Good stuff. I thought we'd initially just have a few words about what defines a traveling exhibition and what the benefits are, because I know they've been really successful as a business in growth in terms of the last 10 years or so. So what benefits do they bring to the institutions when they travel? So Amanda, if you could perhaps expand on that.
Well, I think as I mentioned before, there are many benefits. As I mentioned, the income generation is particularly useful now, but always has been, due to how our museums are funded. And I would also say that, as Arnold mentioned, it's also about using the objects that aren't necessarily on display. We all have a finite space, particularly in London, and where we can place things. And it's also bringing to life those objects that perhaps aren't currently in the galleries, which have equally amazing stories to tell. And just to help our global audience understand the collection a little better.
And I've read that they also bring a lot of new visitors to institutions, so people who haven't gone there before are drawn to the museum by exhibitions like this.
I absolutely agree. I mean, we do have before COVID, we had a large international visitation, and obviously that will come back one day. But actually the fact that a British Museum exhibition and the collection, and also the sort of curatorial rigor that go with the exhibition, to enable that to be, in certain places around the world is really valuable. It really does broaden the audience. And
Nathanja, the Kunsthal is unusual in that it is in one sense a museum, but also technically not a museum. So if you could perhaps explain that.
Exactly. So we do not have a collection. So we're not taking care of cultural heritage, which allows us a tremendous freedom to present and to bring to the Netherlands what we believe has to be shown today. So we were actually, when we opened our doors 28 years ago, the idea was to create a platform for traveling exhibitions, for new concepts, for partnerships with cultural partners, but also partners outside of the cultural realm or a domain. So we were basically built to present blockbusters before we even invented the notion of a blockbuster, but also obviously also to present smaller, more experimental projects that are more related to the local scene. And what I believe is the benefit from traveling exhibitions or creating exhibitions and projects in partnership with partners from abroad is that you can bring something new, share art and culture from around the globe, and so really connect sort of a global scope with the local scene. make sure that our Dutch audience also becomes acquainted with what is happening, in other places in the world.
Good stuff. And Arnold, perhaps if you could tell us a little bit more about the Meet Vincent van Gogh experience.
Yeah, so basically it's a, I would say, crossover exhibition that uses many techniques that are quite familiar for the audience of blooloop, as in we use a lot of teamed set work to create this immersive environment. And nowadays everything is called an experience or an immersive exhibition, of course. And I think that's even within that segment still a wide landscape of techniques that you can apply. I think that what's important, what we try to present, is all been based on 50 years of scientific research that comes from the Museum Institute itself. And this narrative that has been based on the letters and this research, the letters of Van Gogh, this is how we created this immersive environment. And interesting enough, it's an exhibition, of course, with a lot of projections, a lot of, I would even say, special effects. But if we do a visitor survey, one of the things that always pops up as a high rating is that that the audience says the audio guide that comes with it, and there's a bespoke version for children and a bespoke version for adults, so you can really go as a family together. It's a narrative that makes a difference between a video projection only exhibition or really having this deeper layer or a layered, multi-layered story that can get the stamp of a museum as the authority in the standard.
Good stuff. So let's talk about COVID, because I think COVID's impacted attractions in different ways. So zoos, for example, still have lots of animals to look after, so they've got a huge ongoing bill even after they're closed. And I think with traveling exhibitions, you've got the cost of installs, the logistics of travel. So there are a lot of unique challenges that COVID has impacted traveling exhibitions with. So perhaps you could, Amanda, you could talk about how COVID impacted your team.
Yes, so obviously when lockdown came at the end of March, we all began to work from home. By the end of April, the whole team, apart from myself and my manager, were furloughed. So pretty much I was our touring exhibition department. What I would say is that this time I've seen the real benefits of the collegiate and really good partnerships that we've had with people and just how important that is. To date, and I say to date, we've had no cancellations. We have moved all of our touring exhibitions as needed. We've worked with partners to come up with new schedules, new ways of working. Some of those have been quite challenging, I won't deny that, but I think what has really shone through for me has been the fact that we're all in this together in a way, and we're all trying to make this work. And I don't want to make that sound as if, everything is perfect, because of course, it isn't. But so far, things seem to be going okay. And as I said, we've moved most things. During this period, we have moved exhibitions across countries. We have brought exhibitions back from countries. And hopefully we're going to be sending new ones out. We are in fact just doing an install in Madrid as we speak, and the exhibition is due to open tomorrow.
Wow, exciting. And Arnold, how about you? How's COVID impacted?
I have to say that I share what Amanda has also experienced, that of course there are some challenges, sometimes a rerouting, or that we need to reschedule a few dates. For instance, in Lisbon, actually we extended the exhibition that was due to close earlier, and we now are there till the end of the year. Of course, what you also see that there are huge variations in protocols between countries. If you look how things are being dealt with in Asia, it's completely different than in the Middle East or in Europe. So of course that is sometimes a challenge, but also I think it's interesting that you can learn how others approach it. But in terms of bookings, we are launching next year 5 new projects that are mid-size and large size in scale. And I don't see any decline there actually. So it's good.
Okay, good. And Nathanja, how's the last 6 months been for you?
Well, quite interesting to say the least. We had to close our doors on the 12th of March. And since we have over 20 exhibitions a year, you can imagine we're constantly, installing, deinstalling. So we're basically, we were closed for 3 months, and 2 major exhibitions were supposed to open in that time span. So we postponed these exhibitions. So we actually had something entirely new to show to the audience, which was wonderful, and also lucky for us, because a lot of colleague institution had to prolong their exhibitions. And I really recognize what Amanda just said, is that we're all in this together. So you can imagine that I've been on the phone for the first 2 weeks with all our international partners to sort of reshuffle this puzzle of all the traveling projects. Unfortunately, we were faced with 1 or 2 cancellations, decided to postpone an exhibition, or push it with a year. But what I do see is that everyone is really trying to make this happen together, and everyone's very generous. And I think the overall idea is that institutions prolong their projects. Within the COVID regulation, we have 70% drop of our visitors count, not because visitors don't want to come, but because we can have less visitors. So if you want to have the same impact and same outreach, you just have to prolong your exhibitions. And yeah, the overall impact of COVID is this massive reshuffle of the exhibition schedules. And also, for example, our partners in the United States are kind of behind. They are in the middle of their COVID peak. We're already in our second COVID peak. So some of the museums of our partners are still closed, and sitting on exhibitions that were supposed to travel to Europe. So it's been quite a puzzle.
And Amanda, I know the British Museum is collaborating with, forgive my pronunciation, La Caixa in Spain.
La Caixa, yes. Yeah, we have a long-standing, very good relationship with La Caixa. So the first collaboration started in 2015 and goes until 2020. And we have another one already set up that goes up to 2025. So we have a series of exhibitions that go to Spain and then travel around the Caixa forums, the venues. They have 8 Caixa forums around Spain in different areas. So Barcelona, Madrid, Zaragoza, Lleida, Tarragona. I'm going to forget one now, but I won't say them all. Valencia, another one, and Seville. That has been extremely useful for us, because I think the exhibition I mentioned that is installing in Madrid at present is with La Caixa. I think this is around about exhibition 18 or exhibition display 18. So we're very used to each other's practices. We've worked together a lot, and we have another 30 odd displays to do into the future. So, there is a real pull together on this, on how we can make this work. And as Nathanja was saying, some of the challenges have been about the different countries being in different positions with the virus. Madrid is obviously going through a big hotspot at the moment, and I believe we're about 6 weeks behind Spain. So you could feel that coming. But I think the trust and the knowledge between us has been absolutely instrumental to us not cancelling exhibitions at this point. We're quite fortunate in that. I know that.
Absolutely. And Arnold, what's the sort of current state of play and your plans at the moment?
So if it comes to Meet Vincent van Gogh, one of the sets will be on display till the 1st of January in Lisbon. We are preparing a few other tour stops now as well. And actually, they are just continuing as planned. Of course, we need to take into account a few regulations for the new tour stops. But we're also launching a few projects next year. One is for actually a hybrid exhibition, which presents original pieces of art together with this immersive environment. Like, for instance, recently the National Gallery has done with one of their exhibitions. And this has actually been scheduled for mid of next year, and will tour in 5 stops directly one after each other. And for now, we don't see any stops there. Actually, the demand is still there from interest from museums to host it.
So moving on to how traveling exhibitions and non-permanent exhibitions will develop post-COVID, when we ever get there. How do you feel that will be? Will it be technology? Will it be in terms of the visitor experience or the flow? Nathanja?
Well, first of all, I think the importance of traveling exhibition actually increases, because even I think post-COVID, or when we're in the midst of COVID, people will be less able to travel. And if we really want to allow people to enjoy cultural heritage, art, culture, we need to travel culture and art, and to make sure that we stay connected in this way. And in terms of how traveling exhibitions will develop, I think that the current situation forces us or triggers us to think about how we can make traveling exhibitions more sustainable. Indeed, what can technology do? How maybe we should work with partners a little bit closer to home, and then do more stops, have more venues involved. And especially, as I said before, people might be able to travel less, so let's travel the arts more.
Good. And Amanda, how do you think COVID will impact the actual experience of your exhibitions going forward?
I think what it has made us think about more is, what the current offer currently shows, and how we can look into approaching the challenges moving forward. So prior to COVID, we were working merrily away on the models that we always use, which have been very successful in the past. But I think it's made us question whether we have to do things these ways. And I think that's always a bit of a healthy thing, actually. If it's done nothing more, it's made us think about what we do and look at other processes that may help that. I think there will always be a place for touring exhibitions. I think they add a new dimension to the museum or the institution experience. But I think there will be changes, such as potentially exhibition runs will be longer. As Nathanja just said, whether you keep the tour a bit closer to home the next couple of years. Having said that, most of the interest we're having at the moment is from Australia and Asia, so that doesn't seem to be going away. I also think that we need to personally think more about regional experiences, what the regions would want, different parts of the world. We've been quite successful in sending out the same exhibition quite globally, and I think that will change as well. I'm an optimist at heart, so I like to focus on the positives that may come from this. I think it will help us approach the future perhaps in a more sustainable way, as Nathanja just said.
Can I respond to that? I think it's really interesting what you just said, that we have to look at the local audience and the local needs more. So what I can imagine as well, what we do at the Kunsthal, even with traveling exhibitions, we always try to connect it to the local context by either adding artists or the way we talk about the exhibition, our public program. And I can imagine that if you want to share art and culture, wherever you are in the world, you have a different perspective. So I can imagine that touring exhibitions will have a certain core or vertebrae, and then are adapted to the local situation where you present them, which can be actually very interesting, right? And also enriching for the core of the narrative that you're sending out, so that you have more voices, more perspectives, and it becomes more enriching. I can imagine on the level of content and knowledge and knowledge production, we could actually benefit from that. So that you have to travel less objects and travel ideas and knowledge, and then sort of create new constructions every time you're in a new place.
I think that's something that our curators are always quite surprised about when they work on a touring exhibition. It's what they actually learn from partners. Mm-hmm. And actually that's really lovely to see. that sort of change in the curators who might feel that, you know, it's their exhibition, but then actually they have to adapt it. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold, your thoughts on in terms of how the future traveling exhibition might be impacted by COVID?
I think first of all, the future will be bright for touring exhibitions, and I think because it's a forefront of many developments that are actually currently going on within the museum walls, but also outside. And what I mean with that is that, you know, we can send an exhibition from a museum, but maybe present it sometimes not in the museum space directly abroad. Already by that, you are stepping over your shadow as a museum by reaching maybe a different kind of audience that normally you wouldn't attract, only because sometimes even some audience find a museum intimidating. Or if you talk about the visitor journey, if you can inspire someone locally and can bring them back online to the institute to learn more about an artist or some element of the collection, I think those crossovers really makes the magic. And the multiplier, and that is the touring exhibition that gives the spark. And of course, it also is about, you know, nowadays you see technology gets a more dominant factor. I think it will be balanced out in the future. I believe strongly in technology myself, but the core value of a good exhibition is always about how you curate it, the collection itself, of course, and the story that you try to tell. And the race for more projectors and more interactives, no matter if it's COVID proof or not, is a race to the bottom in a way. And I think now we are all growing together. And I think blooloop is one of the platforms for doing that, is that themed entertainment, commercial partners, non-profit partners, they all come together, sitting in one room or in the same space, rethinking what they're been doing for the last decades. And yeah, this is exciting, I think.
Cool. So, Nathanja, if I could just ask you about the importance of co-producing exhibitions at the Kunsthal.
Yeah, well, what we do actually is sometimes we're a venue in a traveling schedule of an exhibition, but we also co-produce and sometimes produce ourselves. And I especially think that today, and you know, realizing that we have to look closer to home, I think co-productions are a very smart move. To share stories, to share your ideas and objects. And so this I think is something that we have to look at as well today.
That's good. And Amanda, I know you don't co-produce, but you work closely with partners and collaboration partners around the world. So tell us a bit more about
that. Yes, I mean, we have partners across the world. As we mentioned before, Lakeisha, that's a model that we haven't reproduced anywhere around the world, but I think that Lakeisha are pretty exclusive, actually. I don't know of anyone else that works in that way, to that extent. Having said that, I think for us, what's really important is the relationships we build with people and the sort of repeat exhibitions that we do. So we have memorandums of understandings, letters of intent, and that just builds on that relationship. And once again, the importance of building relationships with partners can't be underestimated. Unfortunately, we're not able to travel to see people at the moment, as we all know, but I think it just proves, again, that human contact is very important, and this is a blip. It will come back. And hopefully, you know, in some ways, those relationships will be stronger because we've actually got to see colleagues in their real lives, if you like. You know, being joined by cats, dogs, and children. So it's broken down those barriers even further.
Good stuff. And Arnold, does the Van Gogh Museum do much in terms of collaborating on other exhibitions?
Of course, by tradition, they often collaborate when making an assembly, of course, of multiple paintings that come from various loans and create an exhibition. But if it comes to for touring initiatives, at least if I have my factor hat on, we see a lot of co-promoting and co-production as well. So meaning producing together an exhibition that is then being shared amongst various venues, or is being co-promoted with multiple parties that joins forces. So that can be, let's say, a local venue, it can be a museum or a commercial venue or a heritage site, together with a commercial partner. So then you see this co-promotion going on. For instance, we've done it recently in London, where when Meet Vincent was there next to the National Theatre at South Bank. There was this actually co-production between a Spanish promoter and a British promoter that worked together on this site. So yes, I think we will see this more and more, even in these, especially in these times. What I find more inspiring is when you can really create in an international team something together. And recently with Meet Vincent in Lisbon, we had our local partner creating a small pop-up in a shopping mall, a very highly commercial environment. And roughly 60,000 people visited this small pop-up. And we did research and surveys, of course, how many people went to the exhibition or went to the exhibition website. And there was a huge engagement on that by just adding a few square meters in the shopping mall. And these crossovers and these new insights that you can get from a partner, I think these are really the inspiring parts of the game.
Yeah, I really like this that you say that, Arnold, because I think co-production, it helps you to find co-funding, co-promotion, but it also helps you to really reach out to new audiences and to come up with really great new innovative ideas. We usually do the same with our larger exhibitions. We work together with local entrepreneurs, and we have this, from our campaign, we work with city dressing. And I think what COVID teaches us is that we have to be more sustainable, right? So if you co-produce and if you really tap into each other's knowledge and creativity and network, we can really create something new and valuable.
And what object or group of objects in your respective institutions would you turn to in the darkest days of COVID for some form of comfort? What means a lot to you? Amanda?
Well, I'm probably going to say all 8 million objects. And the reason I say that is if you walk around the galleries of the British Museum, you'll see the breadth and depth of history, perhaps, like not many other places in the world. And I think the comfort it gives me is that the human spirit will always prevail, that innovative, that creative, that quality that, in fact, with any disaster, be it global or local, there are always those green shoots of hope. And nothing is new, that these problems have been dealt with before. And, people have continued and society has gone on, and it may change for the good or maybe for the bad. But I think that is what the British Museum means to me. It means that human nature will prevail.
Good note. And Arnold?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an object, but it's actually a new place within the museum walls at the Van Gogh Museum, is that recently a biography about Jo Bonger, which was the sister-in-law of Vincent, has been published, all about Vincent. And it tells the story about a young woman that became a widow after losing her husband Theo, the brother of Vincent. And we're talking today about touring exhibitions. And I would say she was one of the first real promoters promoting the afterlife of Vincent by, as a young woman, going into the world, writing to all these institutes, organizing exhibitions in a time that it was not common to do that. And I think that that biography and also that new place within the museum, I think this is really the place she deserves in history. And I think that's a huge source of inspiration for many of us.
And Nathanja?
Well, there are a lot of exhibitions up right now in the Kunsthal, but I think I would say what really touched me was our program Art Couples that we recently relaunched, because we can host our audience again. And this is a public program where we invite people from different backgrounds, different generation, to come to the museum all by yourself. And then when you arrive here, we team you up with somebody that you don't know from this, different background or different generation. And the other day we had our first art couple event after we reopened our doors. And it was so beautiful to see many older people who were afraid to come to the museum before, but with this program they knew I'm going to be, you know, teamed up with a younger person who can sort of lead me around. And it was really beautiful to see. They all went to the exhibition Black Album White Cube, which is also about connecting and meeting between the world of popular music and contemporary art, and how the two of them have influenced one another. And it was beautiful to see this young student talking to an older woman about the Beatles and Britney Spears. And I think this is what we're here for, right? It's about connecting people, culture, ideas, objects. And yeah, it's so amazing to be able to have opened our doors again and to share this with the audience.
Great stuff. So so we're all optimistic about the future of traveling exhibitions, which is good to hear. Just remains to say thank you to all of you, Arnold, Amanda and Nathanja. Each of them will be on our system, so if you've got any questions, please do feel free to send them over. And thanks very much, guys.